Today I want to do something different. Most of the time in this class, I explain what is happening. I give you context. I give you frameworks. I try to help you understand a world that the mainstream media consistently gets wrong. But today, I want to make a prediction. And before I do that, I need to take you back to early 2024. Because if you understand how I made my first predictions about this conflict, you will understand why what I am about to tell you today is not a guess. It is not an opinion. It is the logical conclusion of everything we have studied together. So, early 2024, the Taiwan Strait is tense but quiet. Most analysts are saying China will not move before 2027 at the earliest. The Pentagon is saying it has time. The media is saying the status quo will hold. And in this classroom, I made 3 predictions. Prediction 1, China will not invade Taiwan directly. It will strangle it. Prediction 2, the United States will not intervene militarily. It will sanction, it will threaten, and then it will hesitate. Prediction 3, the real war will not be fought over Taiwan at all. It will be fought over the dollar. 2 of those predictions have already proven correct. China did not invade, it blockaded. America hesitated. And now the entire world is watching to see whether the 3rd prediction, the one about the dollar, is the one that changes everything. Today I want to explain how this conflict ends, using the exact same framework I used before. I did not make those predictions because I am special. I made them because I use a method. I call it predictive history. It has 3 parts. First, structure. Geography, demography, economic systems. The things that do not change quickly. The things that constrain what is even possible, regardless of what any leader wants. Structure does not care about intentions. Structure does not care about speeches. Structure is the riverbed. It determines where the water flows. Second, incentives. Every player in this game is trying to maximize something, but here's what most people miss. What they say they are maximizing and what they are actually maximizing are almost always different. Game theory does not care about press conferences. It cares about behavior, and behavior reveals the real incentive every time. Third, historical pattern. Not because history repeats exactly, it does not, but because human nature is human nature, empires are empires, and certain traps appear again and again across thousands of years. If you know the patterns, you can see them forming in real time, usually before the people inside them can. Today, I am going to apply this same method to the Taiwan Strait conflict, and I want you to follow along and test the logic yourself, because that is what this class is about, not believing me, thinking with me. Before I make the prediction, I need to understand what each player actually wants. Because here's the thing. What countries say they want and what they actually need are almost always different things. And the gap between those 2 things is where the real story lives. China. What does China say it wants? It says it wants reunification. It says Taiwan is a core interest. It says it is correcting a historical injustice dating back to the Chinese Civil War. What does China actually want? China wants to break the first island chain. The first island chain, Japan, Taiwan, the Philippines, is an American-constructed geographic cage that prevents China from projecting naval power into the Pacific. As long as Taiwan is outside Chinese control, China's navy is essentially bottled up. China cannot protect its shipping lanes. It cannot secure the oil routes that run through the Malacca Strait. It cannot become a true global power. Taiwan is not about nationalism. Taiwan is about geography, and geography is about survival. But China also wants something else. China wants to prove to the global south, to every country watching, that the American security umbrella is no longer reliable, that aligning with America no longer guarantees protection. Because the moment that belief spreads, the entire architecture of American power begins to dissolve. The United States. What does America say it wants? It says it is defending democracy. It says it is honoring its commitment to Taiwan under the Taiwan Relations Act. It says it believes in a rules-based international order. What does America actually want? America wants to preserve the dollar system. Full stop. The dollar system, the network of trade, debt, and reserve currency arrangements that have made America the indispensable financial power since Bretton Woods, depends on one thing above all others: the perception that America can and will enforce the rules. The moment America fails to enforce the rules in a visible, public, humiliating way, every country in the world quietly begins asking the same question: do I still need dollars? And if enough countries ask that question simultaneously, the answer becomes self-fulfilling. America is not defending Taiwan. America is defending the credibility that holds its financial empire together. Taiwan. What does Taiwan say it wants? It says it wants to maintain the status quo, autonomy without formal independence, peace without provocation. What does Taiwan actually want? Taiwan wants to survive, and it is deeply divided about how. There is a faction, the pragmatists, who believe that some form of accommodation with Beijing is inevitable, and that the goal is to negotiate from a position of strength before that strength is gone. And there is a faction, the resistors, who believe that international support, American weapons, and the lessons of Ukraine mean that resistance is viable. This internal division is Taiwan's greatest vulnerability, not its military capacity, its political coherence. Japan. Japan is the player most people underestimate in this conflict. What does Japan say it wants? Regional stability, freedom of navigation, a peaceful resolution. What does Japan actually want? Japan wants to rearm. Japan has been constitutionally constrained since 1945, forced to rely on the American security umbrella. But every Japanese strategic planner understands that an America that fails in the Taiwan Strait is an America that cannot be trusted to defend Japan either. Japan is using this crisis as a justification to become a full military power again for the first time in 80 years. The conflict over Taiwan is, for Japan, an opportunity, and Japan is moving faster than anyone in the Western press is reporting. Now that I understand what each player actually wants, I can begin to see the structure. Let me show you what I mean. Interests alone do not determine outcomes. Structure does. Here are the key structural realities of this conflict, and I want to go through these carefully because they are the foundation of everything that follows. Structural fact number 1. China does not need to invade Taiwan to win. This is the part that most Western analysts consistently miss. The war game they are running, amphibious assault, beach landing, urban warfare in Taipei, is the wrong war game entirely. China has a simpler, cheaper, and far more effective option. It is called a quarantine, a blockade by another name. China positions its naval and air forces around Taiwan, declares a security perimeter, and announces that all ships entering that perimeter require Chinese inspection and approval. No invasion, no bombardment, no casualties that would trigger international outrage. Just control. Slow, grinding economic control. Taiwan imports over 97% of its energy. It imports a significant portion of its food. It is an island of 23 million people that is structurally dependent on open sea lanes to survive. A quarantine does not need to be violent to be lethal. It only needs to be sustained. And China has the naval capacity to sustain it. This is not speculation. China has been rehearsing exactly this scenario with live military exercises since 2022. Structural fact number 2. The cost asymmetry favors China, not America. The United States Navy operates 11 carrier strike groups. Each one costs approximately $6.5 billion per year to operate. Deploying 2 of them to the Taiwan Strait, which is the minimum credible deterrent response, costs over $13 billion per year before a single shot is fired. China, meanwhile, has invested the last 20 years building what military strategists call anti-access area denial capabilities. Hypersonic missiles specifically designed to target aircraft carriers. Ballistic missiles with ranges that cover the entire first island chain. Drone swarms, submarine networks. What this means is extraordinary. For a fraction of the cost of one American carrier, China can credibly threaten to sink it. The People's Liberation Army does not need to defeat the American Navy in a traditional battle. It only needs to make the cost of intervention higher than America is willing to pay. And it has already achieved that. Every American war game conducted at the Rand Corporation and at the Pentagon over the last 5 years has reached the same conclusion, which the Pentagon has been very careful not to say publicly. In a conflict over Taiwan, America loses, or accepts casualties so severe that no president could survive them politically. Structural fact number 3, America's allies in the region are not unified. This is the structural fact that gets almost no attention in Western media. South Korea has approximately 28,500 American troops stationed on its soil. South Korea has also become one of China's largest trading partners. South Korea will not allow American forces stationed in Korea to be used in a Taiwan contingency without its explicit approval. And South Korea will not give that approval if it means triggering a Chinese economic embargo. The Philippines has recently allowed the United States to expand its basing access under the Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement. 4 additional bases, several of them within striking distance of Taiwan. But the Philippine government is deeply divided. The Marcos administration is balancing between Washington and Beijing in ways that make formal commitment to a Taiwan defense scenario politically untenable domestically. Australia will provide intelligence. It will not provide troops. The coalition that American planners are counting on does not exist in the form they are describing it. The map of allied commitment, when you look at it honestly, is far thinner than the rhetoric suggests. Structural facts number 4. China's economic leverage is a weapon it has not yet fully used. China holds approximately $775 billion in U.S. Treasury securities as of the most recent data. More importantly, China is the dominant trading partner for over 120 countries worldwide. It controls between 60 and 80% of the global processing capacity for rare earth elements, the materials without which you cannot build semiconductors, electric vehicles, jet engines, or guided missiles. China has not weaponized this leverage yet. That is not weakness, that is patience. China's leadership understands something that is easy to miss from the outside. The threat of a weapon is often more powerful than its use. The moment China begins restricting rare earth exports or liquidating treasury holdings, the global economic disruption is so severe that it creates political pressure inside the United States that no president can manage. China knows this. It is holding this card deliberately. Now I have the players, I have the structure. Let me give you the prediction. Here is my prediction. It depends on one critical question. Does Taiwan receive a genuine, binding military defense commitment from the United States before China moves to full quarantine or not? Let me walk you through both scenarios. Scenario 1. America makes the commitment explicit. Congress passes a Taiwan Policy Act with teeth. It includes a formal defense obligation, the deployment of a permanent U.S. military presence on the island, and pre-positioned weapons stockpiles. Taiwan is, functionally, made a treaty ally. In this scenario, China does not back down. That is the misreading most people make. Beijing has stated publicly and privately that formal American commitment does not deter, it accelerates. Because China's leadership calculates that every year of delay allows Taiwan to become more deeply embedded in the American security architecture, making reunification progressively harder. If America formally commits, China moves faster, not slower. The quarantine begins. The crisis becomes acute. And now America is in the position it most feared, publicly committed, militarily constrained, and facing an adversary willing to accept severe economic pain to achieve a strategic objective it considers existential. This scenario ends badly for everyone. Not in nuclear war, I will address that in a moment, but in a prolonged economic and military confrontation that fractures the global trading system and accelerates the de-dollarization that America is desperately trying to prevent. Scenario 2. America's commitment remains ambiguous. America continues the policy of strategic ambiguity. It sends weapons. It conducts freedom of navigation operations. It makes strong statements, but it does not formally commit to military defense. In this scenario, China has no urgency. It can achieve its objectives through the slow application of economic, political, and military pressure without triggering a formal American military response. It waits. It watches Taiwan's internal politics fracture. It watches American domestic support for Taiwan involvement decline. And at some point, 5 years from now, perhaps 10, the political conditions inside Taiwan shift enough that a negotiated arrangement, something short of formal annexation, but effectively ending Taiwan's independent foreign policy, becomes possible. China does not need to win this war in a day. It needs to win it over a decade. And based on my structural analysis, scenario 2 is where we are heading. Now here are my 3 specific predictions. Prediction 1. There will be no military invasion of Taiwan in the next 5 years. I know the timeline that gets cited constantly, 2027, 2025, next year, the year after. I do not believe it, and here is why. The people saying China is about to invade are misreading Xi Jinping's incentive structure. Xi does not need the risk of an invasion. An invasion means casualties. Casualties mean domestic political pressure in a system that has zero tolerance for visible failure. An invasion means international sanctions that could genuinely destabilize China's economy at a moment when it is already managing a property sector crisis, youth unemployment above 20%, and deflationary pressure. Xi does not want a war. He wants a fait accompli. The quarantine strategy gives him that without the risk. Watch for continued military exercises, continued gray zone operations, continued erosion of Taiwan's international space, but not an invasion. Prediction 2. The United States will negotiate a quiet, de facto partition of influence in the Western Pacific within the next decade. This is the prediction that people resist most. The idea that America would accept any limitation on its Pacific presence feels inconceivable to most Western observers. But this is exactly what structural analysis forces you to consider. America accepted the division of Europe at Yalta in 1945. It accepted the division of Korea in 1953. It accepted the loss of Vietnam in 1975. Great powers do not announce retreats. They manage them. They call them strategic redeployments. They call them new frameworks for regional stability. They find language that allows them to maintain the appearance of principle while accommodating the reality of power. What I am predicting is not that America announces it is abandoning Taiwan. I am predicting that America and China reach a private, unwritten understanding, the kind of understanding that never appears in any official document, in which America accepts Chinese primacy inside the first island chain in exchange for Chinese acceptance of American primacy beyond it. This is the deal that is already being discussed in back channels. It will never be called a deal, but it will function as one. Prediction 3. Taiwan's final status will be determined not by military force, but by its own internal political evolution, and that evolution is already underway. This is the most important prediction, and the most uncomfortable one. The Western narrative treats Taiwan as a unified, democracy-defending actor that simply needs to be protected from outside aggression. That narrative is incomplete. Taiwan is a society with deep political divisions between those who identify primarily as Taiwanese, those who identify as Chinese, and those who hold a complex dual identity that resists simple categorization. The independence-leaning Democratic Progressive Party and the China-accommodating Kuomintang have been in near-constant political conflict for decades. And what China's long-term strategy is banking on, correctly based on historical pattern, is that sustained economic pressure, generational demographic change, and the gradual erosion of the belief that America will actually fight for Taiwan will shift that internal balance. Not through conquest, through exhaustion, through the slow, rational recalculation of an island society that has to live with the geographic reality of being 180 kilometers from the Chinese mainland. The war over Taiwan will ultimately be decided not in the Strait. It will be decided in Taipei's election cycles. And that is a war China believes it is winning on a long enough timeline. Now let me address the 3 big questions everyone is asking. Question 1. Will nuclear weapons be used if this conflict escalates? No. And I want to be completely direct about this. Nuclear weapons are not a realistic instrument in this conflict. And here is the structural reason why. The use of nuclear weapons does not produce a victory condition for any player. China does not need nuclear weapons to achieve its objectives. It has conventional and economic tools that are more effective and do not carry the existential, reputational, and retaliatory consequences. America cannot use nuclear weapons against China without triggering a Chinese second strike capability that would result in the destruction of American cities. The nuclear taboo that has held since Hiroshima and Nagasaki, nearly 80 years now, holds precisely because every nuclear power has done this same calculation and reached the same conclusion. What you will see is nuclear signaling, rhetoric, exercises, deployment of dual-capable assets, the language of nuclear threat used as a political tool, but not use. Anyone telling you nuclear war over Taiwan is likely does not understand how nuclear deterrence actually functions. Question 2. Can Taiwan defend itself without American military intervention? Taiwan can resist. It cannot prevail alone. This is not a criticism of Taiwan's military. It is a structural reality. Taiwan has a military of approximately 170,000 active personnel, facing a People's Liberation Army of over 2 million. It has a defense budget of approximately $19 billion, facing a Chinese defense budget of over $225 billion. The asymmetry is not insurmountable in a direct invasion scenario. Urban warfare, terrain, motivated defenders, and the logistical nightmare of an amphibious assault do genuinely favor the defender. But against a quarantine, none of those advantages matter. You cannot shoot a blockade. You cannot defend against economic strangulation with artillery. Taiwan's best defense is not military. It is political, maintaining the internal cohesion and the international relationships that make coercion too costly. And that is a different kind of fight entirely. Question 3. Is China's economy strong enough to sustain a prolonged confrontation with the West? This is a real question, and I will not dismiss it. China has genuine economic vulnerabilities. Its property sector crisis has wiped out enormous household wealth. Youth unemployment is structurally high. Export dependence on Western markets creates leverage that America and Europe have been trying to use with partial decoupling strategies. These are real constraints. But here is what the pessimistic analysis of China's economy misses. China is not trying to win a sprint. It is running a marathon. And marathon runners manage pain differently than sprinters. China's leadership has repeatedly demonstrated a willingness to accept economic suffering that would be politically catastrophic in a democratic system. The zero COVID policy, whatever you think of it, was maintained for 3 years against enormous economic cost because the political system could absorb that pain in a way that no democratic government could. In a prolonged economic confrontation, the question is not which economy is stronger in absolute terms. The question is which political system can tolerate more pain for longer. And on that question, the answer is not obviously America. Let me bring this together with one final thought. In 431 BC, Sparta and Athens went to war, the Peloponnesian War. It lasted 27 years, and it destroyed both of them. What is not remembered often enough is that the war did not begin because either side wanted it. It began because both sides were trapped. Athens was the dominant naval and commercial power. Sparta was the dominant land power. Each was terrified of the other's growing strength. Each made calculations that seemed rational in isolation and catastrophic in combination. The historian Thucydides wrote that the real cause of the war was not the proximate triggers, not the specific disputes over Corcyra or Potidaea, but the growth of Athenian power and the fear this inspired in Sparta. He called it the Thucydides trap. China and America are in that trap right now. Not because either side is evil, not because Xi Jinping wants to destroy America, or because American leaders are simply defending democracy. Both sides are doing what rising and declining powers have always done, pursuing their structural interests with the tools available to them and hoping the other side blinks first. My prediction is this. The Taiwan conflict does not end in an invasion. It does not end in nuclear war. It ends in the way most great power conflicts end when both sides are rational, in an arrangement. A messy, face-saving, never publicly acknowledged arrangement in which both powers accept a new division of influence and call it stability. America withdraws from the first island chain not in defeat, but in managed retreat. China absorbs Taiwan not through conquest, but through the slow gravitational pull of proximity, economic integration, and political exhaustion. And the world that emerges is more multipolar, more contested, and, in important ways, more honest about where power actually lives. This is not prophecy. This is predictive history. I might be wrong. I have been wrong before, and when I have been wrong, we came back and analyzed why. Because that is what this method is about. Not being right all the time, thinking carefully, questioning assumptions, and following the logic wherever it leads, even when it leads somewhere uncomfortable. See you next class.